Hello everyone and welcome back to another Forge video. I created something pretty cool here that I wanted to show you. It's pretty simple and it still needs some things worked out, but I thought I'd give you a peek at kind of what I was playing around with here. So I had this idea that maybe you could have one designated player on a team who might be like the airstrike operator or somebody who can kind of call in these missiles. So what I've done here, I'll go ahead and I'll jump in real quick. So you basically just use your marking system since you have access to that in the scripting section. So if I go ahead and I make a mark here, you see a message come up, bombs go, and we get, boom, we get an airstrike that comes in. So I thought that was kind of neat. I added the delays in there and everything, so it kind of felt like, oh my god, here it comes, you know, here comes the bomb. So anyways, so I mean, that's it, but I will show you how I ended up doing this if you're interested. If you're not interested, that's the end of the video for you. But if you are interested in seeing kind of how I did this, just stick around here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back out into edit mode, and so this is really simple. I'm just gonna delete this real quick. All I have here, I'm gonna zoom all the way over to here. Now it's really annoying when you're by this, so I'm not gonna talk forever, but I've created the effects, I've created this little saber missile, and I'm not using this yet, but I plan on adding a flyby. So I'm gonna come back over here, and hopefully you could have heard me, but the gist of it is I put that stuff over there. Now I have this single script brain here, and so I'm going to go into the node graph for this. Now don't be afraid, this is not that crazy. If you're not familiar with this, I'll take it step by step. It's really simple. So the first thing that I do here is I have this object reference to my explosion, and when the game starts I just delete it. So since I haven't figured out a way yet to save things like prefabs, I have just kind of been grabbing object references out of the world for things that I want to spawn later, and then when the game starts I delete them and then respawn them later. So I'm not sure if that's quite the right way to be doing that, but let's just keep moving. So what I did is, again here, the saber missile that lands from the sky, when the game starts I delete that as well. And so those are our main driving events right there on the game start. So when the game starts, both of those things get deleted. And we'll just take this one step at a time. So when the player marks something, we push this splash message here. So the message that we're going to be pushing, if I go into this create UI message, you can see it's got these properties. We're doing string interpolation here of string 1 and string 2. And the strings are bombs go. So that's the UI message that I'm creating. I'm not using this player node. I should just remove this. But anyways, so that should still work because we're just creating a message there, and we're already saying we're pushing it to this player. So I just didn't want you to be confused about what was kind of going on there. So when the player marks, push the splash message, excuse me, for 3 seconds, and then after that wait for 5 seconds. So imagine that right when this node is hit, it just goes immediately into this. It's not a probably, it just does. It goes immediately into this node. It triggers the next node. So you have to think you have 2 seconds in between, because it's 3 seconds that you are displaying the message, and it's 5 seconds until we spawn the bomb. So that's what this is doing here. So we wait after this message is displayed for 5 seconds, and then this object we're referring to here, and the spawn object, this is the saber missile. So all of these lines here that you see, these refer to the saber missile. So what we're going to do is we're going to spawn the saber missile, and we're going to set its position to the position where we marked. So if we go and we travel back to here, this is the position that we marked. So this is the call out position, but it's the call out position 1,000 units over that. So I don't know if you want to say it's meters more than likely, whenever you're scaling in games we're typically using meters, but I don't know what units are being used in Halo Infinite, but we're adding 1,000 units up. So X, Y, and Z. Z is the upward direction, and our operands are the things that we're operating on. Since we're doing a mathematical operation here, we're taking these two vectors, so these positions are vectors, and we're just adding, since we don't want to add to the left or the right, or really it's the forward, backward, and side to side, I guess if you want to call it that, just for layman's terms, we're not wanting to add to those components of that vector, so we're just leaving those as 0, and we are adding 1,000 units above where you marked. So 1,000 feet over where you marked, or 1,000 units or meters or whatever, we are going to set the position of that Saber missile. So the Saber missile is going to pop in over that position. Then after we set that position, we are going to do a translation to a point. So when we say translate, that just means that we're taking it and moving it. So we're moving the Saber missile to a certain position, and the position we want to move it to is actually the position that we called out. So imagine if we're moving from our current position, which is 1,000 feet or 1,000 units, whatever, above the position that you marked, and we're going to translate to the position that you marked, we're just going to be moving straight down. And so what I've done here is also, if we go into these properties for translate object to point, I've just set it to 0.02 seconds. So it's pretty quick, right? It's a missile, so it should be flying through the air real quick. So that's the duration that I set here. The curve is also important here. You need to make sure that this is linear. It is linear by default, but if you try to do any of these easing curves here are more for animation, like when you really want to animate something like a moving platform in a certain way. All of these different curves are going to come in handy. So, but for our use case, it's linear because it does not change through its movement. So as it's moving through the sky, you don't want it to be slowing down at the end. You don't want it to ease in or ease out, if that makes sense. You just want it to have a linear or constant value, or constant velocity. So what we've got here is we're spawning in that javelin missile, or not javelin, excuse me, I think it's Saber. We're spawning in that Saber missile 1,000 feet or 1,000 units over the position that we marked, and then we're moving it to the position that we marked, so it's flying down through the air. Now, when the javelin missile is finally at that point, which I am making a bit of an assumption here that I believe that this node is going to exit whenever this duration is over, but I could be wrong. And if so, I mean, it's such a small duration, it's almost negligible, but after it gets to that point, we're going to spawn the explosion. So once the missile hits the point, spawn the explosion. So we have this object reference here. So this object reference is our explosion. And since in the beginning, remember, we deleted that object in the beginning, we needed to spawn it again. Now, when we spawn it, it's going to spawn it in its initial position in the world when we're referring to it here in this node graph editor. So we're going to need to set the object's position, and the position that we're going to set it to, we're just going to get the current position of the Saber missile, which should be the same position that we called out. However, we cannot use the call out position here on our set object position, I believe. Since this event, I don't know if this event has already expired or it's kind of out of the scope or it doesn't really have context over it. But okay, so we get the position of the Saber missile and spawn in that explosion and then wait for half of a second. and then we're going to go ahead and delete both of them. So right now, there's nothing in here that's going to collect the players. So what we could do is we could take this target list here and figure out what players were marked, and then at the very end here, we could just end up either adding damage to those players. We would need to simulate that in, since that explosion isn't something that just adds damage or any kind of real physical forces to the world. It's not adding any forces to dynamic objects or rigid bodies at all. So you would need to add in those things. So hopefully this isn't too confusing for you. And definitely don't just copy this. Just go and make a, I mean, of course you're allowed to, but you know, try to do this yourself. You know, I want you to walk through this and take your time and figure out exactly what's going on here, because when I did this, I just threw everything together and then just made everything look pretty much at the end, just to make sure that everything kind of flowed nicely so that I could demonstrate it. But I don't really like overlapping lines, and I do apologize for that, but really don't have that better much, you know, of an option here. I mean, this is kind of the best way I could figure to organize this. So anyways, I hope that helps, and I hope you like that. I mean, I'm having fun with this so far. I think that this is just amazing, being able to have this level of scripting in Forge. I mean, like airstrikes, come on. This is crazy. We got airstrikes in Halo. So anyways, thanks for watching, and guess I will see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.